Pink Floyd in Bluey? Did Bluey really fall in love with John Luke? Does Bluey train karate? In fact, friends, all these details are hidden in the episodes of Bluey, and I'm sure you didn't even realize half of them. So let's take a look at them. Let's start with one that's probably giving us a clue about what will happen later in the episodes. When Bluey and John Luke meet, they seem to get along quite well. In fact, we could even say it was love at first sight. And what they didn't notice here is the following. Bluey gets too excited when she's with John Luke, and that's why she makes a drawing of the two of them. Bluey likes John Luke, but it doesn't end here. Apparently, this drawing was very important to Bluey, as it keeps appearing in other episodes. They show it to us on the wall in the bingo episode, and we can also see it in the show episode. Is Bluey waiting for John Luke to return to give it to him? Let's hope, if it's not too late. And John Luke returns when Bluey has married Mackenzie. The next detail, probably many have missed it, and we can find it on some plates, especially we are talking about the plates of Bluey's car. The Healer family's plate says 419 HLR, and you HLR will think, huh? Yes, we already know that HLR means healer, but you're forgetting about the number, which in fact also tells us something important. In the digital world of colors, the number 419FF is the code used to create a shade of blue. And yes, friends, it's the blue of Bluey's fur. So if we read the full code, the Healer family's plate actually says Bluey Healer. Had you noticed this detail? Apparently, Bluey's family has great musical taste. In the weekend episode, if we look very closely at Chili when she comes back from running, we can see her music player for a few seconds. Zoom in on this part and you'll realize that the album cover she's listening to is a dog version of The Dark Side of the Moon, a Pink Floyd album. And this little detail, without a doubt, lets us know a little more about Chili. Leave in the comments, what music did you think Chili was listening to? In the hospital episode, you probably found Bluey's curious purple octopus quite familiar. Where had we seen it before? Ah yes, in fact, friends. This octopus looks a lot like Mr. Octi, don't you know who that is? Does the Powerpuff Girls feature a small purple octopus character? Now you know why, this octopus probably seemed familiar to you. Now let's talk about all the pineapples we found on several occasions in Bluey's house. No, it's not what you think. Some of us had been quite naughty and thought that these little pineapples actually meant something else. Like Bandit and Chili like to try pineapples from other orchards. But, well, Bandit and Chili didn't help much either, as they gave quite strange signals that confused our brains even more. But apparently we were quite pessimistic, because in reality, this is the pineapple that represents Ludo Studios, and that's why we can see it in several episodes. So everything's fine with Bandit and Chili, nothing strange. Some of the references we find in the episodes can be quite obvious, and many of these we find with Wintun in the episode stories. For example, here, when we see Wintun all muscular, moving those huge pectorals, in fact, this is a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger exactly when he makes his huge pectorals dance. And the next reference, if you didn't see it, is because you really need your bottle-bottom glasses. And we can find it in Chloe's house. She is a cute Dalmatian, and to make it very clear that she is a Dalmatian, at her house we can read the number 101, referring to the 101 Dalmatians. In the episode, Grandpa, they let us know a little more about Chili's childhood. In fact, apparently she used to play in this same place when she was a puppy. Well, when Chili and her daughter start a race to catch Grandpa in one of the trees, we can see in a few seconds that Chili's name is written on one of them. So because of this, we believe that Chili was also quite a mischief when she was the age of Bluey and Bingo. And of course she decided to mark her territory. Thank goodness she didn't do it in another way. Each episode of Bluey tries to tell us a backstory, and the garbage truck episode was no exception. While Bingo is trying to befriend someone who seems to be quite combative, Bluey gives us to understand that she is also learning something. Every night, Bluey wears a karate suit the first night they take out the trash. She wears a white belt, which indicates to us that she is a beginner in this world of karate. And if you paid attention to this detail, you could have realized that by the end of the episode, she was already a yellow belt. which gives us to understand that the characters continue with their lives while we don't see them on screen. And another super interesting and curious thing which has to do with one of Bluey's stuffed animals. It has to do with this green mushroom here. And the thing is that only a few managed to recognize where this mushroom is from. And no, it's not from Mario, but this mushroom is clearly the mascot that the YouTubers Vinesauce have. Which tells us that maybe Bluey is a big fan of them. But the most ironic thing is that in the episode, in dance mode, she walks right past them and doesn't even notice or get excited. That's right, friends, these two guys here are Joel and Viney. The funniest thing is that Joel is well known for always drinking Pepsi in his streams, and right here in Bluey, they even put him with a blue can of Pepsi. Who knows what other YouTubers we might find in the Bluey universe? Maybe us? And for Stranger Things fans, surely it wasn't hard for you to notice the reference in the Fair Seesaw episode? When Chili is chatting with Pom Pom's mom, if we pay attention to their conversation, they seem to be talking about Stranger Things. Pom Pom's mom tells her that she hopes they come back in the 4th season. Chibi asks her if she has seen the trailer, mentioning that it seems to take place in Russia or a similar location. What does this remind you of? For a second, Hopper came to mind. I hope he comes back for the 4th season. Well, he's in Russia or something like that. Did you guys notice? If you like paying attention to details, I'm sure you noticed the detail they showed us in the Hammerbad episode. And I'm not talking about all the items we see around. If you activated your eagle eye, you might have noticed that in one of the corridors, 3 quite peculiar names were written. And it's about Dimitri, Kloth, and Edelgard. And these names belong to the leaders of the houses in the game Fire Emblem 3 houses. Comment if you had noticed this detail. And speaking of Hammerbarn, you could only have noticed this other detail if you live in Australia or you are snooping around on the internet news. And it is that some of the Australian stores called Bunnings are being transformed into realistic versions of Hammerbarn. They even sell your gnome husbands in case you're alone at night, or for this February 14th. How sad. I only have Don Pasita's hardware store nearby. The next detail is a bit harder to notice, but indeed, friends. The $5 bill that Bluey receives when her tooth falls out has traveled more than you and I in the last few months. We can see that it goes from Bluey to Winton's dad, then to the German sausage man, then to the juice lady. And so on until it ends up in the hands of the musician. But the bill keeps traveling and then we see it in dance mode and the silent game. And this bill will probably keep traveling and traveling. And we'll find it in the following episodes of Bluey. But tell me, had you noticed this? The bill? The next interesting detail we find is in the episode The Creek. While Bandit is resting on the slide, at the top we can see a little puppy, who it seems is not doing very well as it looks like he even wants to throw up. Do you see what you caused, Bandit? You probably sprayed him with your gases. But there are other details that not only indicate a simple reference but give us a clue about what we might see in the next season. These details have to do with the things that Chili keeps from when Bluey and Bingo were babies. We see that she still keeps Bluey's crib, a few toys, and of course, Bandit's little nuts, so there are still children. This makes me think 2 things. Is Chili ready to have a 3rd baby? Or is she just saving all these things? Because it's probably Brandy who's going to adopt a baby? But these are just simple theories. Let's not forget that Bluey and Bingo are growing up and the show must go on. To finish all these references, Pink Floyd was not the only band that had its reference. In the episode Phones, when Grandpa plays with Bluey and Bingo, we can also find another musical group. The Australian children's music group Wiggles appears in a signed photo. But this could only be noticed by the true eagle eyes. But now that you know, I'm sure it will be too easy for you to identify it next time. And these were all the hidden references we found in the episodes of Bluey. What other ones did you find?